That's when Matilda and William embark on the project they will be remembered for. This, the Bible of Republicans, the life of Theobald Wolfe Tone, his letters, his diaries, his speeches, and more importantly, their appendixes. Users, history. Until Matilda and William bring out their book, the first 2 decades of the 19th century has seen the winners write the history of the 1798 rebellion. The most appalling of these comes out in 1802, The Memoirs of the Rebellions in Ireland by Richard Musgrave. He frames the entire rebellion as sectarian in nature, the Catholic peasantry uprising against their Protestant overlords and massacring them in terrible events like Scullabogue and Wexford Bridge. The other 20 or so government massacres don't feature. In fact, a lot of things don't feature. As Guy Biner points out in his brilliant Forgetful Remembrance, in a 1,000-page book, only 26 pages deal with Ulster. It was obviously too inconvenient to mention a Presbyterian or Protestant rebellion in the north. Unfortunately, the Musgravian take of the rebellion is the one we see regurgitated again and again and again. Right up to the documentary The Irish Story, where the whole thing seems to be about Scullabogue, sectarian tensions, and Wolfe Tone cheated the hangman by cutting his own throat. Only Waddy Cox of the Irish Magazine does any pushback against this in the 1810s. He goes to jail for his trouble, and eventually they pay him off and he has to move to America. So when Matilda and William's book, Life, comes out in 1826, it causes a sensation. It leaves out a few things, Tone's mean words about America, stories of drink and women, even though he did write the diaries for his family, and some other odd quotes. In 1796 he writes, "I hope the next time they catch me, they may hang me up." And he has an interesting take on Lord Edward's death in prison. Lord Edward died of poison, as it should seem, but whether taken voluntarily by himself or administered by his enemies does not appear. So Wolfe's under no illusions about the Irish prison system. Sadly, the modern editor of the book, Thomas Bartlett, believes the suicide story. He writes in the introduction, "Tone's wound was undoubtedly self-inflicted. The fact that he languished for a number of days afterwards without accusing anyone is proof. And as I proved in the first show, we don't know if it was 8 days, 8 hours, or 8 minutes, or 8 seconds. And how would we know he accused anyone anyway? We didn't get a word out of him for the whole time, bar what Sandys and Lentane told us." The book is brilliant, it's huge, it contains everything of Tone. One reason establishment historians have been able to go with the suicide story, however, is because both Matilda and William allude to believing the story in Life. Matilda says, "His resolution was deliberately and inflexibly taken, in case he fell into the hands of the enemy, never to suffer the indignity of a public execution. Also, in setting off for that last unfortunate expedition, he told me he knew his life was gone, but that executed he never would be." True, but many of us say they'll never take me alive. Also, William, in his appendix, talking about Tone's death, writes, "That his end was voluntary, this determination, previous to his leaving France, which was known to us, and the tenor of his last letters, incline me to believe." And this is usually where historians stop, and they're generally able to say, well, both the wife and son believed it, so there you go. But then they always leave out this next bit. William writes, "But on the other side, it cannot be denied that the character of these men, Tone's jailers, would warrant the worst conclusion." And then William goes into an almighty rant, which basically forms the basis of this entire historical exploration. "The details of my father's death and last words only reached the public ear through their reports, the jailers. No one was allowed to approach him after his wound, no medical attendant to come near him, except the prison surgeon, a foreigner and French immigrant. Why was no coroner's inquest held in his body?" William gets this wrong. There was a coroner's inquest, but could you get your hands on the papers from the day 30 years later in America? "The resistance which was opposed by the military to the warrant of the Chief Justice was indecorous and violent in the extreme, nor was it till compelled by the firmness of Lord Kilwarden to give way that they acknowledged the wound of their prisoner, though, according to their own reports, it had been inflicted during the preceding night. Was it possible that, fearing the interference of the civil courts, they hastened his end, or, what would be more atrocious still, admitting the fact that he had wounded himself, did they intend to conceal it and to glut their mean and ferocious revenge and insult their dying enemy, who had thought to escape their indignities by dragging him out in that state and executing him with their own hands? That their preparations continued till interrupted by the interference of a superior authority, that the wound of their prisoner was anxiously concealed as long as possible, and that no one, even afterwards, was allowed to approach and speak to him during his long agony, are certain facts. Pretty impressive rant, and pretty impossible to leave out if you're writing a book about Wolfe Tone saying that his wife and his son agreed with the whole suicide theory. Regardless of that epic takedown, because Matilda and William offered another point of view, in that, well, my father was brave, and yes, he said he would never be taken alive, historians are able to pick and choose which version they go with, and they always go with wife and kid believed Tone committed suicide. But there's another reason why Matilda and William may have gone down that road, and it's the reason a lot of historians on the Wolfe Tone supporting side go down that road. Because in a romantic, heroic way, they don't want the mean, torturous government to have the last word. They want Wolfe Tone to have taken his own life because that was the brave thing to do. Cheating the hangman is the brave way to go. They want Tone to have agency. And the Irish are exceptional at this. It's what we call losers' history. The winners don't just get to write history, the losers get to write it too, and they get to write their version where they look good no matter what, even if they fail again and again. How are we to inspire future generations if we say that every effort we made, oh, that was pointless? So we have to big up what happened no matter the reality. One brilliant example of this is Italia 90. As far as I'm concerned, Ireland won the World Cup in 1990. We didn't just get 3 draws, fight a penalty shootout to the finish and then get kicked out by Italy. We won the World Cup. End of story.